Greetings, fellow moviegoers, and welcome to Movie Central, the place to talk about movies, TV shows based on movies, toys based on movies, games based on movies, and rides based on movies. I'm your host, Mr. CCS, and this is my pet gorilla, George. We return to Universal Monsters today, and we're going to be discussing one of the most famous monsters of all time, the werewolf. In folklore, a werewolf, or occasionally lycanthrope, is an individual who can shapeshift into a wolf either purposefully or after being placed under a curse or affliction, with the transformations occurring on the night of a full moon. If you excuse the paragraph from Wikipedia, werewolves are quite frightening beasts that you definitely don't want to take off. Particularly, they've had an effect on pop culture, with several movies as well as making their way into bigger universes like Marvel or Harry Potter, and a few others. Once again, the most prominent werewolf in pop culture comes from Universal, with their movie that was released in 1941. The film not only featured the son of the Man of a Thousand Faces, Lon Chaney himself, but it also revitalized the way people see fictional monsters. They could very much be a man or woman manipulated by a force of nature. And this message was used so well that this movie got an R-rated remake in 2010, which, yes, I do plan on reviewing. So, how was Universal's movie about the famous schizophrenic beast film? Well, it's time to find out. This is the 1941 monster movie, The Wolfman. Every man who is pure at heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms, and the moon is full and bright. When his brother dies, Larry Talbot, played by the late and talented Lon Chaney Jr., returns to Wales and reconciles with his father, played by the late Claude Rains. While there, he visits an antique store, and hoping to impress Gwen, played by the late Evelyn Ankers, the attractive shopkeeper, buys a silver walking cane. That same night, he kills a wolf with it, only to learn later that he actually killed a man, played by the late great Bela Lugosi, aka Dracula himself. A Romani woman, played by the late Maria Uspikaya, explains that it was her son, a werewolf, that he killed, and that Larry is now one himself. So right off the bat, this and Frankenstein are my favorites of these classic monster movies so far. They're both amazing examples of doing the most with the least amount of time. This movie is only 70 minutes long, but it does quite a bit with its short runtime. Not only that, the movie is scary and also emotional at the same time. I choked up a bit throughout the course of it. That's a feat that a monster movie has never been able to accomplish before. The only real monster story to do this was Dracula, and that was all from the writing of Bram Stoker. So the Wolfman automatically is great, and there's nothing that can make me deny that. So before I give my final verdict, I'm going to take time to analyze it and explain why I enjoy it so much. So, immediately, I really love the character of Larry Talbot. He's a very complex character, starting off as a nice and put-together character, but once he's bitten and kills a werewolf, he becomes less put together and more frantic and nervous as he realizes that he's slowly losing himself. The moment when he finally becomes the monster is exciting, but simultaneously tragic at the same time. You really want Larry to be okay in the end because Lon Chaney Jr. delivers a performance extremely believable. Unfortunately, he meets his unfortunate fate at the hands of his own silver cane. Now, I want to talk about Larry's father, Sir John. Like his son, he's an extremely put-together individual and a kind-hearted person. He cares for his son's well-being and makes sure he's okay, which makes it all the more heartbreaking when he's the one to kill the beast in the end. You feel bad for him in the end as you realize he now has to live with the guilt of taking his own child's life. As far as Gwen goes, she's well utilized, as she also cares for Larry's well-being and even tries to leave with him when he tries to run away from the town to save everyone from his curse. The man Larry accidentally kills was important to the plot for that reason, but he stands out because he was portrayed by Dracula. It makes me wonder if Dracula's still alive and actually hiding among different crowds, but that's just a theory and I'm getting violently off track. The Romani woman Maliva was mysterious and left the audience with a ton of questions, but there's not much else after that. As far as the other characters go, some of them have some standout scenes, but overall, most of them can be werewolf fodder for all I care, because in my opinion, these movies aren't the greatest when it comes to side characters. The side characters in this movie are better than the ones in Dracula and The Mummy, but are of the same quality as those in Frankenstein, meaning they're okay and serve the story well, but are overall forgettable. That said, however, this movie has the best of the lead characters to me, so there's that. Now, moving on to the effects, they look pretty good for this time. The Wolfman effects look decent, and the design is extremely unique. It's not exactly what comes to mind when I think wolf, but it works out quite well for a movie of this caliber. Like Frankenstein, this film, I think, was shot in Little Europe, and it looks great. It's a really good-looking movie for something that is over 80 years old at this point. And as far as the music goes, Hans J. Salter composed the score that gave off the right emotions needed, darkness and sadness at some points. It's a well-done score for a movie of the 1940s, and well done for a monster movie. It's not as good as Steiner's music from King Kong, but it works out pretty well for a movie on this scale. Now, as far as scare factors go, the movie is pretty frightening. The first horror scene with the werewolf was well done, as we actually have a kill on screen with the wolf feasting on the corpse. Also, this movie works best when you're fearing for Larry when he's transforming into the Wolfman. So, overall, The Wolfman is a frightening and also really emotional movie that adds the right amount of scares to it. It's not perfect, but it is damn good and currently my favorite of the Universal monster movies, which is why I am giving it a solid 9 out of 10. Definitely a worthy monster in Universal's library. Well, that's it for this week. Feel free to leave your thoughts on The Wolfman below, and tune in on November 30th as I jump to the 1950s to review The Creature from the Black Lagoon. With that said, my name is Mr. CCS, this is Movie Central, and that, my friends, is a wrap. See you next week.